Good morning, Melee, and happy birthday! Welcome to Pound 2021, and thank you for joining me in celebrating the 15th anniversary of this legendary event series. My name is Kevin Deere, and I'll be your host for this morning. And in addition to hosting this show, I'm coincidentally also the host for this event, and have had the pleasure of spending the last months working hard as the head event organizer for Pound 2021 on behalf of Gallant Gaming. Thank you to Gimmer and the folks at VG Bootcamp for the opportunity, and all the amazing folks behind the scenes for making this event possible. I'd love to take a quick second to shout out Nathan Sandwich and Bender, my two TO staff who will be helping run this weekend's bracket. In today's episode, I'll take you through this weekend's schedule, and I'll end things off with a fun interview with the legendary Pound organizer himself, Plank. Alright, without further ado, let's jump into the event schedule for the weekend and what to look out for. After today's episode of Good Morning Melee, we'll be kicking off the tournament. This weekend's event features 460 competitors, a $5,000 prize pool, and much more. We'll start off with East Coast pools commentated by Turndown for Walt and Radar. Of the two halves of the bracket, the East Coast half is definitely looking stacked. With 60 more entrants in the West Coast, East Coast really showed up this time around. After that, we'll head over to the West Coast pools phase, commented by Vish and Chillin. The two regions are each divided into 4 pools of approximately 64 entrants each. From each of these pools, 8 players will advance into the top 64, which will start at roughly 4 p.m. Pacific time today. While the pools phase will be entirely best of 3, top 64 onwards is when we'll start to see intense best of 5 action taking place. We've got 2 commentary duos who will help us make our way from top 64 to top 16. Zoo and Lovage, followed by Toph and Judemug. Tomorrow, I'll be kicking off the day at 11:15 a.m. Pacific time. Following a quick introduction to the day, I've actually got a very special surprise on the analyst desk planned for you. It's a crossover you never knew you needed. The old generation meets the new generation, the boomers meet the zoomers. I'm excited to welcome Tophokins and Dark Gen X to the stream at 11:30 a.m. tomorrow. The analyst desk will offer players and storylines to watch out for during the final portion of the bracket. We'll kick off top 16 at roughly noon Pacific time. Top 16 to top 8 will be commented by the lovely Zoo and Vish. To finish things off, Lovage and Toph will round out the evening, with top 8 starting at approximately 3 o'clock p.m. Pacific time. Alright everyone, I hope you're as pumped as I am, so join me in celebrating 15 years of Melee action at the Pound Tournament Series. Let's go hear from the legend of Pound himself, Plank.
Good morning, Melee. Hi, everyone. I'm here today with Plank. Plank, it's an honor to have you here, dude. For the people who might not know who you are, do you want to share a little bit about yourself?
Plank. I hosted the Pound tournament series from the second one ever through the very last one before I sold it over to VGBC, and they have it now. So I've been around, played Melee, Project M for a long time, organized a lot more tournaments, worked a lot of Xanadu's for a long time, just a lot of other various locals and stuff too. So just a lot of tournament organizing, played Melee, Brawl, have a little bit of notoriety throughout each game that I've played for different reasons and in my TOing career. So I started playing in 2006, so I've just been around a long time at this point, I guess.
Yeah, man. 2006, man. That was like 15 years ago. So it's crazy to see Pound living on 15 years. I can only imagine what that must feel like. How's that feel like for you, seeing Pound continuing, knowing, you know, the legacy you had with Pound, and I can only imagine other people running my tournament one day in the future and how that might make me feel.
It's awesome. I mean, I'm glad. You know, I kind of got to a point in my life where it wasn't a top priority for me anymore, and I always put everything I had into it, and I just felt like I wasn't really there anymore. And you know, the VG guys, I love them, and they were really wanting to take it over and go on board. So I went to I forget what the last, I mean, I don't remember, barely before the pandemic, but whatever the last you know, major Pound was that they did at the Laurel racetrack. I mean, I went over there and they just did the series such great justice. Did great work over there. I mean, they went above and beyond to make sure that there were just way too many friendly setups. Like that was always my thing for Pounds. That was my top priority. So I felt like they really honored it well, and it's awesome to see it still out there and the online tourney pop up and all that. So.
Yeah, man. No shortage of friendly setups here because you can always just hop on unranked. You always have your setup in front of you. Yeah. It must be a really, really different environment from the Pound you first hosted relative to the online Pounds that are happening today. Do you want to talk to me about the first Pound you hosted? You said you didn't actually host Pound 1, I guess. Is that what you were saying earlier?
No, so that was my friend Travis actually founded the series, and that was like a small 60-person tournament in my hometown of Mount Airy, and that was the first tournament I ever actually went to and entered, and what really like sparked my love for the game. Until then, I had kind of like just made fun of my friends a little bit. We were all in high school, like, oh, you're playing like the Nintendo fighting game, and kind of play a real game. I played StarCraft, so I was like, you know, why don't you play a real game? And but then when I went to the first Pound that Chinese hosted, and I was kind of inspired by seeing all, you know, all kinds of different people from different walks of life, like a very diverse crowd in this not very diverse area I grew up in, like on the fairgrounds, and just seeing all these different people, different walks of life, all there to play the same game. It like caught a part of my heart, and that's what really brought me in, and kind of what inspired me to continue the series when Travis wasn't really hosting. So then I took over with the second one, and went from there. The second one was at the same place. You know, again, it was maybe like 100 or maybe 200 people. It's hard to remember all the numbers at this point, but I know it was bigger, but not that much bigger. And we got some support from MLG on that, on the grassroots circuit. And I think really like MLG stepping in and really helping, you know, do that did wonders for the Pound brand. I mean, it shot it up to what it ended up being. Was a huge thing for it. Shout outs to JV 3x3, wherever that guy is.
That's fantastic. That's actually really cool to hear that the MLG Grassroots Fund like was able to help you accelerate and make Pound a bigger series. Like, it's kind of cool to see that there's a parallel today. I'm not sure how much you follow Melee today in 2021, but for example, this Pound is actually the Golden Guardians have their own grassroots fund now, where they're helping financially fund all these grassroots tournaments. So Pound is actually on this grassroots fund by Golden Guardians. So crazy,
Oh,
15
awesome.
years later. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fantastic. So Pound 2 went pretty well, was at the same place, and you said you got involved with MLG there. Pound 3, what were your goals, I guess, scaling from Pound 2 to Pound 3? And for people who might not be knowing, what time era are we actually talking about here?
So I think Pound 2 was in 2007, Pound 3 I think was in 2008.
Mhm.
And this one we really wanted to scale up. We went and we were able to partner with a club at UMBC and get a really good deal on the ballroom at UMBC, the University of Maryland, Baltimore County.
Yep.
And so we were able to move into a much bigger space. Logistics much more difficult. But that was our goal, is to be able to kind of move up and you know, bring in more people there. And I think we did. We ended up cracking around 300 something. I think it was the biggest tournament that had happened at that point. And that one had a kind of crazy ending. Everything went well with it, except the things just went a little slow. We ended up having to switch venues to the basement of one of the dorms, and like all the finals, all the Mango on Corneria, like that, all that run, you know, the rest on the R wing was all done in the basement of college dorms after we had to relocate and walk in the middle of winter like a half a mile across the venue. But we all did it. There's, you know, it's many less people then. So that was Pound 3. And yeah, we met most of our goals for that. I mean, no matter what happens or how well that tournament was ran, in the end, like 15 years later, 13 years later, all anyone remembers is, you know, Mango resting that guy on the R wing.
Yeah, dude, that's a great clip. We'll definitely get that in here so people can see it. Fantastic. Yeah, and
Yeah.
then pound from there. Yeah, you can just feel free to
All
continue
right.
walking down the history because this has been really
So,
enlightening for me. I didn't know a lot of this stuff, so
so pound four, we went to the Frederick Fairgrounds, which was about 15 miles west of where the first one was, and that was the first one we brought Brawl in. That was definitely the biggest tournament that had ever happened at that point. It was, I think, 370 or so for Melee, and then like 180 or 190 for Brawl. Those numbers were just bonkers at that point. Pound four is probably the tournament I was the most proud of. I mean, there were again way too many setups. There were 380 people, and I think we had 80 something Melee setups,
wow.
and it was just like when you wanted to, like, you came across the country to play Melee, you play Melee. So I was really proud of that one. That was the first one, I think, where we really got projector screens up, all that. That was VG Bootcamp's first involvement in Pound, and I think one of their first tournaments in general. VG Bootcamp also dipped their hands in catering at that event, and I think
What?
their family was making like steak and cheeses and shit at the venue.
That's so funny, dude.
Oh, so that was moving from there, and that tournament went great. That was where we had the disrespectful Jigglypuff grand finals with the dash dance jab onto Hungrybox, and that was just a really great tournament. Silent Spectre beating Armada was that tournament. That was one of the biggest upsets. That was crazy, and that one was just really great. And then pound five, we went to the Ritz Carlton, or no, that was 2016. Pound five was the Hyatt Regency in Crystal City, and that was the one that kind of like got me into trouble and went down a little bit of infamy, because that was the first time we ever any Smash event had gone to a ballroom. The first time that it was like in a hotel where the rooms were where you played and you slept, and the first time with the 24-hour venue, and just like a
Wow.
huge upscale on everything. And you know, when we hosted it, things were kind of looking, or when we announced it, we announced way ahead of time. That, you know, back then, like a year, and things are going up and up with Melee, and you know, we get in our contract and all that, and then like Melee just kind of starts dying off a little bit, and it was like the dark ages right in there, and tournaments all around were performing very poorly. But you know, it's very, even as the months are coming up to the tournament, it's like it's Pound. It's been around, like everybody goes to Pound. You know, not having that many people signed up right now is not unusual. Nobody signed up back then until the very last minute. I mean, it made things a logistical nightmare. So you know, we're just like doing as much as we can and like building up, and eventually, when all was said and done, there just wasn't enough prize money to pay the players. I had, you know, the venue had my bank account information, and there was some cancellation on rooms that drained out all the remaining like prize funds that were there. And the end of the day, it was like we just committed to a much bigger investment, kind of bet on Melee, and it failed.
Yep.
There just were not enough people to support what we did. The overall numbers from pound four to pound five went down significantly by a couple hundred people, at least 150. And we are obviously, after going up and up and up and trying to grow and grow and grow, anticipating growth, not anticipating lower numbers.
Yep.
So when they didn't come in at the end, we almost still had enough to get out, you know, decent partial prizes. But then there were some unfortunate events with cancellations, and you know, back then, all the events I had done, it was just tied to my personal bank account.
Yep.
Like the events, you know, I just did it from there. Like I didn't have any business going along with it. It was all just like completely grassroots and done by itself. So, and when they ended up draining my account for the canceled rooms, so that one was on a sliding scale. So basically, you rent out X amount of rooms, the venue cost $1,000. You rent out, you know, X amount of rooms, the venue costs $2,000. Like, you know, the more rooms you sell, the lower it goes. And there was a clause in there where that people could cancel, and a lot of people canceled rooms like at the very end, which makes sense. But it was just some poor planning, bad luck, low turnout, and overall. And so that sucked, and I got a lot of shit for it, rightfully so, in a lot of regards. But people were very, you know, aggressive about it too, and it was everything I had worked on for the past like 5 years was just like gone out from under me, and like I just wasn't able to handle some of like the criticism and harassment I got, honestly,
Yeah.
from some people in the community at that time. So I just like completely withdrew, didn't play Smash for like a year and a half. All the local scene knew me and they knew the situation and like understood what happened.
Mhm.
And I had tried to explain the situation out in public too, but it just got washed away by people just saying wrong things. Like the the people that are most like incorrect are the loudest, like always, and just posting all around. So that sucks. But all my homies, all the people in NDVA, they all knew what happened. So I was able to like start going to tournaments again here. Eventually, someone came up and and I never in my whole life, we can talk about what my life has been later, but I never had the means that I would be able to pay that off on my own. But somebody came back later, like someone who's kind of a figurehead in the community at this point, and offered, if I could pay back people from the last pound, will you host another one? And I was like, fuck yeah, man, let's go, let's do it. So then fast forward to pound 2016, we get everybody paid off from pound 5. We sell out the ballroom in the Ritz-Carlton in Tyson's Corner, have an overwhelmingly successful event. Everyone gets paid, all the debts get paid off, and Smash was booming at that point. So, and we just killed it. It was a very, very good event. And so that's kind of like the story of the pounds. There are a couple, like pound 5.5 was in there somewhere. I did that one, kind of as a test to come back a little bit. And then pound underground, I guess that was the last one that like I really ran, and that was kind of like just a throwback to like round robin pools. Tons and tons of setups. Just I think it ended up being 300 something people. It was pretty much just like a nostalgia bit for me. I was like, can I create a tournament that feels like what tournaments used to feel like? And it worked. And all these old school heads came. It was like almost the majority, because every old school head from within 200 miles came. But people weren't really flying in from afar, and that's fine, because it just ended up being like a really old school reunion. A lot of old friends came, all of Team Arlington and the Team Band guys, and it was really fun. And then from there, I ended up, I really just wasn't, I just wasn't feeling as much what the large tournaments have become now. They're just very different. They're not as intimate. I still love Smash and everything, and I still play. I play on NetPlay. A lot of people have probably run into me. I enter tournaments on there. But I just want to be a player now. So I ended up giving it off to VG Boot Camp, and that's where they kind of went and ran with it. And then they did the last pound at the Laurel Racetrack, whichever year that was.
I think that was just before COVID, right? I think it was one of the like final couple big tournaments before COVID, or yeah, something like that. Yeah. Awesome, man. Yeah, I knew a bunch about that pound situation, and honestly, when I've been around for a while, but I hadn't actually read any of the original posts or stuff, and like reading it, and I kind of already understood how it must have gone down from your side, and then reading your original post, I was really sad, because like your original post, it made sense to me when I read it. I'm like, yeah, like he clearly like it didn't sell enough, and you're in a shitty situation. I'm sure you worked super hard, so I felt really bad about that situation, but I'm glad like you were able to turn it all around. I'm so grateful to whoever was able to help out and reverse those debts and stuff, because that's huge as well. But I think people now take it for granted what you ended up accomplishing there, though, right? What you just told me about how that is one of the first times we've had like a ballroom tournament, and how you did really like pull out all in the stops for things that we take for granted at events today, like having 24-hour venues. Like I ran a 24-hour venue at Battle BC3, and that was like not easy even with resources. So like imagining it with even less resources, how hard that must be. And the amount of liability you probably were taking on over your head was probably in the tens of thousands, which people don't recognize. And if it's a nameless, faceless corporation without a human behind it, it's like really easy to just be like, yeah, of course this company's going to take care of that. But you were Plank, right? You were 20-something-year-old, presumably, who loved Melee, right?
Yeah.
So thank you so much for like doing everything you've done with Pound, and yeah, hopefully the infamy can all be like arrested because it clearly. I mean, you said there was some stuff involved, but yeah.
Yeah.
Anywho,
Well,
jumping. Yeah, go ahead.
oh, go ahead. No, you go.
Yeah, I was just gonna jump then. So you were saying, Melee was a part of your life, and you were TOing Pound on somewhat regular basis, and you ran quite a few of those. Outside of Pound, did you run any other events? Were you also a local tournament organizer, or was Pound just the thing you kind of ran as your big event?
Pound is mostly the thing I ran as my big event. I ran a series of tournaments at UMBC for a short while. Uh, the same place where Pound 3 was,
Hmm.
but in just a really small hall. I used to run tournaments out of my apartment in Frederick, Maryland during Brawl. I ran tournaments at another place in Frederick called Thanks for Playing. I ran the Xanadu's. I actually ran the first CEO in Florida with Jabali.
Really?
Um, I actually found that venue, and originally there was a different tournament that was being hosted by a group that I was working for, and they were kind of like going around the country doing a series, but I was like behind the scenes with them traveling, and I realized like that they probably didn't have the best of intentions, and they were not going to put on a good tournament. So I nuked the entire Smash tournament and my relationship with them, and I went with, but it also had the fighting games scene in it too, and when the fighting game scene and I came out with this, like apparently the guy I was working with, the fighting game scene already knew he was problematic, and so then it was like, oh shit, so the Smash community and the fighting game community like rallied together at this point back around the first time of the first CEO, and I remember so I had to make SRK accounts for the fighting game guys and like talk about it with them, and we ended up like going together. Oh my god, my cat's going crazy. We ended up joining together, and I found that venue down there. Jabali financed it. I flew down. I ran the Smash at the first CEO and like hung out there and was with him. And then from there, he pretty much took that series and ran into something great that's still going on too, which might be one of the next oldest majors that are still going on in Smash. So I almost kind of found it too.
Yeah, I didn't realize how crucial a role you played in CEO, and it's so cool to see, where CEO is today, and Jabali is just like a legend at this point as well. So that's
Yeah.
fantastic, man. Um, so yeah, so that was what else you did in Smash, which is really cool. Outside of Smash, what were you doing? You said were you also studying in university at these times at UMBC, or like, yeah, what was your personal life like, and balancing that
No,
with Smash?
up until that point, like Smash was pretty much everything I did. Like I went to college, but I never even got my associates. Wasn't for me. Didn't like taking gen eds. And so I was just like waiting tables at different restaurants up until Pound 5 pretty much when I was like 23. And at right when Pound 5 happened, I was about a month into like working at Wells Fargo. But before that, I worked just doing waiting tables, TGI Fridays, Outback Steakhouse, and just playing Smash. Just making as much money as I could in like 2 weekends, and just driving around as far as I could the next 2 weekends, and traveling just to play. Um, yeah, so that was mostly that. Since then it's changed a lot. I worked at the bank for 3 years doing big corporate bankruptcy foreclosure stuff, and then quit that because it was just like morally corrupt. And then I went back to bartending, and then I was doing some project management stuff for a facility maintenance company. Hated that, and now I love my job. I work for a meadery making alcohol made from honey, and I do the events and social media and taproom management there.
Oh.
And it's like a company with all my friends. It's just a perfect situation for me and where I am. So,
Dude, that is
but
so cool. I'm so happy to hear that, man. And does that ever cross over with Smash? I mean, do you ever have Smash with your friends at the meadery?
I have, yeah, a couple times. I brought in, we did like a anti-Valentine's Day Smash tournament there, and it's just like a lot of like casual people that could come in, but like some of my friends, like Melee friends and stuff, came in, and we were playing like Ultimate for that. So we have a big projector screen at the Meadworks. So I've done a couple of those things there. I've also hosted like Smash tournaments at like other breweries a couple times that are like friends of our brewery. He's just
Nice.
kind of in that scene. So I like to it's a fun, hang out, and there's always people who just walk into the bar and they're just like, "Oh, Smash Brothers, I'm the best at this." And it's just
Always.
always fun to to show them that they're not.
Yeah. Awesome, dude. That's fantastic. Well, as we start to wind things down, wanting to ask you, so, you've been around the scene for a long time and you've probably seen a lot of changes happen, a lot of things come and go, a lot of phases. Um, we're about to enter like a really interesting phase of Melee when locals start coming back post-COVID because so many people are playing the game now more than I think ever before because of Slippy and its accessibility. And the scene's really different now as well than it ever has been. Um, what are things that we should remember going forward that, we had back in the day that people might forget and maybe we took for granted? Like, what are some things, or are there just things that you haven't seen enough of that you miss from back in the day in Smash?
Um, I guess just be. I mean, that's a tough question. Just I just be nice to each other. I mean, we're all here to play
Yep.
the same game. We have the same interest. That's a giant thing. Um, uh, but man, I mean, I'm very happy with the way the scene has gone. It everybody who I've talked to who's still in there, like it's great, and people are comfortable, talking about tough issues, even when there are problems in the community, they'll talk about them and they'll call people out. And I think it's still, it's a welcoming community is trying to better itself. And that's, when something grows to the size that the community is now, there's going to be some struggles that come along with it, but, just keep growing, grow through it. I have a lot of hope for what Melee. I still think the game can go for a long, long time, and I think it will. And I'm going to keep playing it until my fingers don't let me, which I'm fine with, by the way. Probably because I played Sheik my whole life, but everybody else my age just like, oh my god, let me get a box. I'm just like, doo, doo, doo.
Got mine ready.
Yeah,
Honestly,
like,
dude, I can't.
dude, I used to press like, especially back when I was the best that I was relatively in like 2007 to 2009, 2010. Man, I did not press many buttons. I didn't have to. So
Uh,
I got a lot of years of not pressing buttons under my belt.
is planking named after you?
It is. It is.
Want to tell
That's
me the
named
origin?
Yeah, it was Brawl, and when I started playing Brawl, I thought it was fun, and then I started going to tournaments, and I realized it wasn't, and I hated it, and so I wanted to do whatever I could just to ruin it. And so I was like, okay, this character is obviously better than everyone else. There's no punishment for me being on this ledge, and I'm just gonna do that. And because it got so defensive in the tournament, and like people would just pick Falco, and even if they're losing, they would just stand on one side of the stage and just shoot lasers the whole game. So, and that's all they're doing. Like, oh, you have to come to me. I have this thing, and I'm like, so I'll get a lead, and I'll do the thing where you have to come to me. Like,
Dude, that's so funny.
how that game was played, and I just hated it. And then they had to do the ledge grab limit to get rid of it, and then they took it out in the newest games. Like they patched it. Like,
Dude, you literally got it patched out of the game.
fuck, man, curse my life. That
That's-
game was just. It started out fun, and I had a lot of hope for it. I played in a lot of Brawl tournaments. I busted it out in the biggest Brawl tournament that had ever happened. It was in California, and it was like a $3,000 pot or something. And I flew out there and just tornadoed and hung on the ledge for like 18-hour gauntlet of a day. It was just, and people were just booing when I was.
Of course, dude. Hated it.
Comes over like they're all trying to play cool. I'm just like, you gotta imagine it's fucking probably like Mango and Lucky in there playing Brawl, like 12 years old, and I'm just like tornadoing all their friends, like, boo.
Oh god,
Cool.
that's great.
I did
dude.
not want to be. Ugh. Yeah, that's where that came from. And then I was really upset when people started taking it to Melee, because I was like, no, that's not what this was meant for.
Hungrybox planks, right? Like,
and then people calling it planking Melee. I'm like, no, it's only planking in Brawl. It's only planking in Brawl. In Melee, that's Muchikinging or Hungryboxing. That's not planking anymore.
That's so funny. I totally realized. Yeah, you got screwed there. All right, dude. Well, that's fantastic. All right, I'll end it off with one last question that I've been asking everyone. What does Melee mean to you?
Melee, to me, means community, I think, for me. I was never religious growing up, nothing like that. Like, I didn't have a lot of friends in school. It was the first time I felt like I ever was in like a sense of community and people that I knew we all had each other's back, and just really got that thing that I think is really important that a lot of people don't really have the chance to get anymore. So I guess to me that's what Melee is.
Fantastic, man. Thank you so much for joining me today. Really appreciate it. Learned a lot, and I hope everyone enjoyed. And stay tuned, everyone. This weekend is Pound Online, and hope you enjoy the hot Melee action. See ya.
Later.